The crying started at 3 in the morning. Marcus Bennett woke with his heart already pounding, his feet hitting the cold floor before his eyes fully opened. He knew that sound. 3 years of single parenthood had trained his body to respond before his mind caught up. Ethan's room was at the end of the narrow hallway. The nightlight cast a pale blue glow across the boy's face, wet with tears, his small chest heaving with the kind of sobs that came from somewhere deep and unreachable. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and pulled his son close. "I dreamed about Mom," Ethan whispered against his father's chest. "She said she misses me." Marcus closed his eyes. He could feel his own tears threatening, but he held them back. He had become an expert at holding things back. "She always misses you, buddy." Always. He looked across the room at the empty chair by the window, Rachel's chair. She used to sit there every night, reading stories to Ethan until his eyes grew heavy. The cushion still held the faint impression of her body, even after 3 years. Marcus couldn't bring himself to move it. After Ethan fell back asleep, Marcus walked to the kitchen. The apartment was small, the walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's television, playing some late-night infomercial. He opened the drawer beside the refrigerator and pulled out the stack of envelopes he had been avoiding. Medical bills, collection notices, final warnings. The number at the bottom of the page stared back at him. $847,000. That was what remained of Rachel's cancer treatment. 18 months of chemotherapy, surgeries, experimental drugs that insurance refused to cover. 18 months of hope that turned to ash. Marcus looked down at his left hand. The wedding ring was still there, a simple gold band that had cost him 2 months of savings when he was 23 years old. Rachel had cried when he gave it to her. She said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. He had not taken it off since the day she died. "I don't know how to do this anymore," he said to the empty room. "I don't know how to keep going." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew he would keep going. He had no choice. Ethan needed him. And there was something else. Something that kept Marcus awake at night more than the bills, more than the loneliness. Ethan's heart. The doctors had discovered it during a routine checkup 6 months ago. A congenital defect, they called it. Not immediately life-threatening, but it would need surgery within the next 2 years. The cost was somewhere around $200,000, not including follow-up care. Marcus made $32,000 a year working at the cemetery. He picked up night shifts at the warehouse for another $15,000. Weekend plumbing jobs brought in whatever he could get. It was not enough. It would never be enough. The morning came too quickly. Marcus was in the kitchen by 5:30, boiling water for instant coffee, spreading peanut butter on bread for Ethan's lunch. Through the thin walls, he could hear the neighbors already moving around, their lives unfolding parallel to his, but never touching. Ethan appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. He had made his own bed again. The corners were crooked, the blanket bunched up on one side, but he had tried. He always tried. "Morning, Bud." The boy climbed onto the stool by the counter. His eyes went to the photograph on the refrigerator, the one of the three of them at the beach the summer before Rachel got sick. She was laughing in that picture, her hair wild from the wind, her arms wrapped around both of them. "Dad, does Mom know about my heart?" Marcus stopped spreading the peanut butter. He set down the knife and walked around the counter to sit beside his son. "She knew you have a special heart. She said you were stronger than anyone." Ethan nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that cut deeper than any medical bill. "Dad, why do you always help other people? Mr. Johnson next door said you were stupid for fixing Mrs. Miller's pipes for free." Marcus took a breath. He had been waiting for this question for a long time. "Do you know what Mom said to me before she went away?" Ethan shook his head. "She held my hand and she looked right at me, and she said, 'Don't let the sadness change who you are. Keep being kind, because Ethan is watching.'" The boy's eyes were wide and serious. "She said that?" She said that, and I promised her I would. So when I help Mrs. Miller or anyone else, I'm keeping my promise to Mom." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned against his father's side. "I want to be kind too, like you and Mom." Marcus kissed the top of his son's head and felt something crack open inside his chest. It was not pain exactly. It was something closer to hope. The cemetery where Marcus worked sat on the eastern edge of town, a sprawling green space dotted with headstones and ancient oak trees. He had worked there for 2 years, maintaining the grounds, preparing grave sites, standing by during services in case anything was needed. Today there was a funeral scheduled for 11 o'clock. Harold Kingsley, according to the paperwork. Some kind of real estate developer. The family had paid for the premium service, which meant Marcus would be present throughout the ceremony. He was raking leaves near the chapel when the first cars arrived. Black sedans, expensive. The kind of cars that cost more than Marcus would make in a decade. A woman stepped out first, tall, sharp-featured, mid-30s. Her dress was black and elegant, probably worth more than Marcus's monthly rent. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They held something he recognized, not arrogance, emptiness, the kind that came from a wound that never healed. Behind her came a man in a tailored suit, older, with the kind of posture that said he expected to be obeyed. He was already on his phone, talking about assets and percentages and legal timelines. They walked past Marcus without seeing him. To them, he was invisible, part of the landscape. He heard fragments of their conversation as they moved toward the chapel. "The lawyers say we can contest if we move quickly. What about Sophia? Sophia gave up her rights when she left." Marcus heard something else too. The woman's voice, lower, meant only for her brother. "Father never forgave me for what happened. Don't bring that up. Not now." More family members arrived. They gathered in small clusters, speaking in low voices. Marcus noticed that no one mentioned Harold Kingsley by name. No one talked about who he was, what he loved, what he would be missed for. They only talked about what he left behind. Then another car pulled up, smaller, older, a sedan that had seen better days. A woman stepped out, moving slowly. She was pregnant, clearly. 8 months along, maybe more. She wore a simple black dress and flat shoes. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She walked toward the chapel with the careful steps of someone carrying a heavy weight. The tall woman from earlier turned and saw her. "Sophia." The name cut through the quiet like a blade. "I thought you understood. You are not family anymore." The pregnant woman stopped. Her name was Sophia. She did not answer. She just stood there, trembling slightly, her eyes fixed on the chapel doors. The tall woman stepped closer. Her voice was ice. "You chose to leave. You chose that teacher over your family. And now you want to come back and pretend you belong here?" Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. "He was my grandfather. I just want to say goodbye." "You should have said goodbye to your husband." "Oh, wait, he's dead too." The cruelty of the words hung in the air. No one moved to intervene. The other family members turned away, pretending not to hear. Sophia swayed. Her hand reached for the wall, but there was nothing to grab onto. Marcus dropped his rake and ran. He caught her before she hit the ground, his hands gripping her arms, steadying her weight against his body. She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "You're okay," he said. "I've got you. Just breathe." He guided her to a bench near the side of the building. Someone had left a water bottle on the groundskeeper's cart. Marcus grabbed it, twisted the cap off, and handed it to her. "Small sips. Take your time." Sophia's hands shook as she drank. Color slowly returned to her face. After a long moment, she looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't even know me. You needed help. That's enough." She studied his face as if searching for something. Then she said words that made no sense to him. He was right about you. He was always right. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Sophia stood, steadied herself, and walked slowly toward her car. She did not go into the chapel. She did not say goodbye to her grandfather. She just left. Marcus finished his shift at 3 o'clock. He picked up Ethan from the after-school program, took him home, started dinner. Mac and cheese from a box, the orange kind that Ethan loved. They were halfway through eating when someone knocked on the door. Marcus wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened it. A man stood in the hallway, middle-aged, wearing a suit that cost more than everything in Marcus's apartment combined. He carried a leather briefcase. "Marcus Bennett, that's me. My name is Jonathan Mills. I'm an attorney. I represent the estate of Harold Kingsley." Marcus frowned. "I don't know anyone by that name." Jonathan Mills smiled slightly. "May I come in? This won't take long." Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. The lawyer sat in the chair across from the couch. He set his briefcase on his lap and opened it with a soft click. "Mr. Kingsley passed away 2 days ago. The funeral you attended this morning was his. I work at the cemetery. I didn't know him. Perhaps not consciously." Jonathan pulled out a document. "But Mr. Kingsley knew you, and he left you something." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "Left me what?" Jonathan looked him directly in the eye. "His entire estate, approximately $500 million. The words did not make sense. Marcus heard them, but they felt like sounds from another language. "That's not possible." "It is." Jonathan's voice was calm, measured. "Mr. Kingsley amended his will 6 months ago. He left very specific instructions. If, on the day of his funeral, you performed an act of selfless kindness witnessed by his granddaughter Sophia, you would inherit everything." Marcus sat down. His legs would not hold him anymore. "I don't understand. Why would he do that? I never met him." Jonathan leaned forward. "Do you remember a fire 5 years ago? In the parking garage at the Riverside office tower?" The memory hit Marcus like a wave, smoke burning his lungs, heat so intense his skin felt like it was melting. An old man trapped behind shattered glass, unconscious, flames licking at his clothes. Marcus had wrapped his work jacket around his fist and punched through the window. The glass had sliced his arm, but he barely felt it. He had reached in, grabbed the man's collar, and pulled with everything he had. The man was heavier than he looked. Marcus had dragged him across the concrete, coughing, barely able to see through the smoke. When the sirens came, when he was sure the man was breathing, he had stood up and walked back inside the building. His shift wasn't over. There were still floors to mop. "That man was Harold Kingsley," Jonathan said. "You saved his life, Mr. Bennett, and then you left before anyone could thank you." Marcus looked down at the faded scar on his forearm. He had never told anyone how he got it. "I didn't know who he was. That's exactly why he chose you." Jonathan placed another document on the table. "He spent the next 5 years watching you, not intrusively, just observing. He saw how you raised your son alone. He saw you give money to strangers. He saw you help people who could never help you back." Marcus looked at Ethan, who was staring at him with wide, confused eyes. "This morning was his final test," Jonathan continued. "He wanted to be sure you were still the same man. When you helped Sophia, you proved you were." The lawyer stood. He placed the documents on the table and walked to the door. "Come to my office tomorrow. We'll begin the paperwork." Then he paused, his hand on the doorframe. "Mr. Kingsley believed in you, Mr. Bennett. He believed you would use this gift the way he never could." The door closed behind him. Marcus sat in the silence, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Ethan climbed down from his chair and walked over, pressing himself against his father's side. "Dad, what's happening?" Marcus wrapped his arms around his son. He could not speak. He could only hold on. $500 million. Enough to pay every bill. Enough to fix Ethan's heart. enough to change everything. But somewhere deep inside, Marcus felt a shadow forming. This was not the end of something. It was the beginning of a storm. The first attack came 2 days later. Marcus was washing dishes when the pounding started. Not a knock. A demand. He opened the door to find two people he recognized from the funeral. The tall woman, the man who had been on his phone, Richard and Catherine Kingsley, Harold's children. Catherine did not wait to be invited in. She pushed past Marcus into the apartment, her eyes sweeping across the small space with visible disgust. "So this is where you live. Charming." Richard followed, calmer but colder. He looked at Marcus the way someone might examine an insect. "Mr. Bennett, we need to talk." "I don't think we do." Catherine laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. "You think you're someone now? A gravedigger who got lucky? You think you can just take our family's fortune?" "I didn't take anything. Your father gave it. Our father was dying." Richard's voice was quiet, controlled. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was manipulated. By who? By me. I never even met him. That's exactly the problem. Richard stepped closer. "My father built that company from nothing. Do you understand? He started with one property and turned it into an empire. That's his legacy, our legacy. And you think you deserve it because you pulled him out of a car?" Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Then give it back." Catherine's eyes were hard. "Sign the papers. Walk away. Pretend this never happened." Marcus looked at both of them. He saw the anger, yes, but underneath it, he saw something else, something that looked almost like pain. "Your father didn't leave you out because he hated you," Marcus said slowly. "He left me in because he wanted you to learn something." "Learn what?" Richard's jaw tightened. "That we're not good enough? That money doesn't make you good enough." Catherine's face flushed red. "Don't you dare lecture us about our father. You didn't know him." "You're right, I didn't. But maybe that's the point." They left without another word. But Marcus knew it was not over. It was only beginning. Over the next week, Marcus's life began to collapse. First, his landlord called. Rent was going up. $500 more per month, effective immediately. When Marcus asked why, the landlord mumbled something about market rates and hung up. Then he received a letter from the cemetery. His position had been eliminated due to budget cuts. He had until Friday to collect his things. The warehouse called next. His night shifts were no longer available. They were restructuring. On the fourth day, a letter arrived from the insurance company. Ethan's surgery authorization was under review. They cited suspected fraud. Someone had filed a complaint. Marcus read the letter 3 times, his hands shaking. Without that surgery, his son's heart would fail. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday, and someday was coming. On the 5th day, Marcus came home to find words spray-painted across his apartment door in bright red letters. Thief, liar, fraud. He tried to clean it before Ethan saw, but the boy came running down the hallway while the paint was still wet. "Dad, what does that say?" Marcus knelt in front of his son, blocking the words with his body. "It's nothing, buddy, just some people being unkind." "Why would they write that?" "Because they're scared. And scared people sometimes do cruel things." But the worst was yet to come. Ethan came home from school that afternoon with his shirt torn and his lips swelling. Marcus dropped to his knees in front of his son. "What happened?" Ethan's voice was thick with tears. "Tommy hit me. He said you're a bad person. He said you stole money from a dead man." Marcus pulled his son close, feeling the small body shake with sobs. "That's not true, buddy. You know that's not true." "I know, Dad, but why is everyone saying it?" "Because sometimes lies are easier to believe than the truth." That night after Ethan was asleep, Marcus sat alone in the dark. The apartment felt smaller than ever. the walls pressing in from all sides. He picked up his phone and dialed Jonathan Mills. "I'm done," he said when the lawyer answered. "I can't do this. I can't let my son suffer because of money I never asked for." Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. "This is exactly what Harold feared would happen." "What do you mean?" "He knew his children would come after you. He knew they would try to make you feel small and unworthy. That's why he left the video." "What video?" "Sophia has it. She was supposed to give it to you if you ever doubted yourself." Marcus called Sophia. She answered on the first ring. "I was waiting for you to call." 20 minutes later, she was at his door. She held a small USB drive in her hand. He made this 3 days before he died. He was so weak he could barely sit up, but he insisted. Before they watched it, Sophia asked to sit down. Her pregnancy made standing difficult. Marcus brought her water, and she began to talk. "I need to tell you something first. About my family. About why I understand what you're going through." She told him about her childhood, how her mother died in a car accident when she was 8, how her father, Edward, Harold's younger brother, had been consumed by grief. "He couldn't look at me without seeing her," Sophia said quietly. "I have my mother's eyes. Every time he tried to be there for me, the pain was too much. He started traveling for work. Then the trips got longer. Eventually, he was gone more than he was home." "So Harold took you in?" Sophia nodded. "Uncle Harold became my grandfather in every way that mattered. He gave me stability when my own father couldn't. He raised me, loved me, made me feel like I belonged somewhere." "And your father, Edward? He never stopped loving me. He just didn't know how to be a father without my mother. We reconnected a few years ago. He's been trying to make up for lost time." She paused, her eyes glistening. "That's another reason Harold trusted you so completely, because you saved my father's life too." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "Do you remember a motorcycle accident 3 years ago, near Lincoln Elementary School?" The memory surfaced slowly. 3 years ago. Right after Rachel died. He had been moving through life like a ghost, barely aware of anything. But yes, he remembered. A man lying in the street, a truck barreling toward him, acting without thinking, pulling the man to safety before the wheels could reach him. "I pulled someone out of the road," Marcus said slowly. "I didn't even look at his face. I just grabbed him and dragged him to the sidewalk." Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "That man was Edward Kingsley, my father, Harold's brother." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. "You saved my grandfather from a fire. You saved my father from a truck. 2 different times, 2 different years, and you never knew who they were." She squeezed his hand. "When Harold found out what you did for Edward, he was certain. He knew you were the one. Not because of one moment of heroism, because kindness is simply who you are." Marcus thought about Edward, a father who lost his wife and couldn't find his way back to his daughter. Marcus understood that pain. He had felt it every day since Rachel died. "My wife passed 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Cancer. Some days the grief is so heavy I can barely breathe. But I keep going. Because Ethan needs me." Sophia wiped her eyes. "That's the difference between you and my father. You stayed. You fought through the pain for your son. My father ran. He spent years trying to forgive himself for that." She held up the USB drive. "Harold saw something in you that he never saw in his own children. The ability to love without conditions, to give without expecting anything back." They watched the video together. Harold Kingsley appeared on screen, thin, gray, an oxygen tube beneath his nose, but his eyes were sharp, alive. "Marcus, if you're watching this, it means my children came after you. It means they tried to make you quit." The old man coughed, winced, continued. "I'm sorry for that. I raised them wrong. I gave them everything except the one thing they needed. The understanding that wealth without character is just greed with a big bank account." Harold paused to catch his breath. I need to tell you about my children, about why they are the way they are. Richard spent his whole life trying to make me proud, but I was too busy building my empire to notice. By the time I realized what I'd done, he had already become someone who only knew how to take. Harold's eyes glistened. And Catherine, my daughter, his voice cracked. Catherine lost 3 babies, 3 pregnancies that ended before they began. The last time the doctors told her she could never have children. She wanted to adopt, but her husband left her instead, said she was broken. Marcus thought about Catherine, the cruelty at the funeral, the emptiness in her eyes. She's not cruel because she's evil, Harold continued. She's cruel because she's shattered. She looks at Sophia, pregnant and glowing, and she sees everything she can never have. Harold leaned closer to the camera. Don't give up, Marcus, not because of the money, but because your son is watching you. He's learning what kind of man to become. I saved your name in my will because you saved my life, but you'll save something more important than me. You'll save my family from themselves. The video ended. Marcus sat in silence, tears running down his face. Rachel's words echoed in his mind. Ethan is watching. He looked toward his son's room. He thought about what it would mean to give up, what lesson that would teach. He turned to Sophia. I'm not giving up, not for the money, for Harold, for my son, for everyone who believed I could be more than I am. He picked up his phone and called Jonathan Mills. I'm accepting the inheritance. You're sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. He hung up and looked at Ethan's door. Tomorrow he would face the Kingsleys one last time. He would tell them something that would change everything. He just had to figure out what that was. The conference room was cold. Marcus sat on one side of the long table with Sophia beside him. On the other side sat Richard, Catherine, and 3 lawyers whose names he had already forgotten. Jonathan Mills stood at the head of the table, a stack of documents before him. Richard spoke first. You don't belong here, Mr. Bennett. You're a grave digger, a janitor. You think you can just waltz in and claim what 3 generations of Kingsleys built? Marcus met his gaze without flinching. I'm not here to claim anything. I'm here to honor your father's wishes. Catherine leaned forward, her voice sharp. Our father was dying. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was thinking more clearly than he ever had, Sophia said quietly. He finally saw what mattered. You don't get to speak. Catherine turned on her. You abandoned this family. I chose love, something you've forgotten how to feel. The room crackled with tension. Marcus raised his hand. I have something to tell you, something your father wanted you to know. Everyone fell silent. 3 years ago, there was a motorcycle accident near Lincoln Elementary. A man was lying in the street. A truck was coming. I pulled him to safety without knowing who he was. Richard's face went pale. That man was Edward Kingsley, your uncle, Sophia's father. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Your father knew, Marcus continued. He knew I saved his brother's life, just like I saved his. 2 separate moments. 2 strangers who needed help. And I walked away both times without asking for anything. Richard stood slowly, his hands trembling. You saved Uncle Edward too. I didn't know who he was. I just saw someone who needed help. The room was silent. Catherine stared at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why do you keep helping strangers? What do you get out of it? Nothing. That's the point. Marcus looked directly at her. Your father told me about you, about the babies you lost, about your husband leaving, about how much pain you carry. Catherine's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He had no right to tell you that. Maybe not, but I'm glad he did, because now I understand. You're not cruel, Catherine. You're broken, and I know what that feels like. He paused. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Some days the grief is so heavy I can barely breathe. But I keep going because my son needs me and because Rachel made me promise. Promise what? That I wouldn't let the sadness change who I am. That I would keep being kind because Ethan is watching. Catherine was crying openly now. I've been so angry, she whispered. For so long. I don't know how to be anything else. You can learn. It's not too late. Marcus stood at the head of the table. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing with the inheritance. Everyone leaned forward. I'm keeping $10 million. That's enough to pay for my son's heart surgery, buy a small house with a yard, and clear the medical debts from my wife's treatment. Richard's eyebrows rose. And the other $490 million? I'm creating a foundation. The Harold Kingsley Foundation. It will help single parents who work 3 jobs and still can't make rent. It will pay for medical care for children whose families can't afford it. He looked at Catherine. And it will support women who have lost children, women who have been told they're broken, women who need to know they're not alone. Catherine's face crumpled. You're including me? After everything I did to you? Your pain deserves to be seen. No one should grieve alone. Richard sat down heavily. You're giving away almost everything? I don't need $500 million to be happy. I just need enough to take care of my son and help others do the same. He looked around the table. Your father wanted this money to mean something. This is how I make sure it does. The healing took time. Real healing always does. In the first week, Richard hired a private investigator to dig into Marcus's past. The report came back clean. Not a single scandal. Not one skeleton. Richard read it 3 times, looking for something, anything, that would prove Marcus was a fraud. He found nothing but kindness. In the second week, Catherine drove past the foundation's temporary office 3 times before finally going inside. She sat in the parking lot for an hour crying before she could bring herself to walk through the door. Marcus was there. He didn't say anything. He just handed her a cup of coffee and let her sit in silence until she was ready to talk. In the third week, Catherine showed up at Sophia's apartment unannounced. She stood in the doorway, unable to speak, until Sophia pulled her inside. Catherine touched Sophia's belly for the first time. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry I couldn't be happy for you. I'm sorry I made your pain about my own. Sophia held her, and they cried together. In the first month, Sophia gave birth to a healthy boy. She named him Harold David Kingsley, after the grandfather who believed in her and the husband who loved her. Catherine was the first person at the hospital. She arrived before Richard, before the nurses finished cleaning the baby, before anyone else. She held her great-nephew in her arms and wept. I'll never have one of my own, she told Sophia, but I can be the best aunt this little boy has ever seen. In the second month, Richard called Marcus. I don't forgive you yet, he said, but I want to understand. They met for coffee. Richard talked about his father for the first time in years, about always trying to earn approval that never came, about becoming so focused on inheritance that he forgot what family meant. I wasted so much time, Richard said, waiting for something that was never going to make me happy. It's not too late to start over. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you're trying. In the third month, Catherine asked to lead the Foundation's program for women who had experienced pregnancy loss. Marcus agreed without hesitation. She threw herself into the work. She met with women who had suffered what she had suffered. She listened to their stories. She held their hands. She told them they were not broken. And slowly, something inside her began to heal. 1 year after Harold Kingsley's funeral, the foundation held its grand opening. The building was not extravagant. Marcus had insisted on that. It was warm and welcoming, filled with light and staffed by people who genuinely wanted to help. Families lined up outside, filling out applications for rent assistance, medical grants, job training programs. Marcus stood near the entrance, greeting everyone who came through the doors. Ethan was beside him, healthy and strong. The surgery had been a complete success. The scar on his chest was already fading. "Dad, I want to be a heart doctor when I grow up, so I can help kids like me." Marcus knelt down and looked into his son's eyes. "Then that's exactly what you'll be." Catherine approached, carrying baby Harold in her arms. She had changed so much in the past year. The sharp edges were gone, softened by purpose and love. "Your son is extraordinary," she said. "But I suppose you already knew that. I learn something new from him every day." Richard joined them, his expression still guarded, but no longer hostile. "I owe you an apology," he said to Marcus. "I spent my whole life thinking money was the measure of a man. My father tried to show me otherwise, but I wouldn't listen. You're listening now. That's what matters." Richard extended his hand. "My father would have been proud of what you've built." Marcus shook it firmly. "He would have been proud of you too. Both of you." That afternoon they gathered at the cemetery. Marcus, Ethan, Sophia, with baby Harold, Catherine, and Richard. They stood before Harold Kingsley's grave, the autumn sun warm on their faces. The headstone was simple but elegant. Harold Kingsley, 1950-2024. In the end, he found the family he always wanted. Ethan tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, is Grandpa Harold happy now?" Marcus looked at the family gathered around him. Former enemies who had become allies. Broken people who were learning to heal. A legacy of kindness that would outlive them all. "I think he's happy, buddy. I think he's finally at peace." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question Marcus had been dreading and longing for at the same time. "Dad, does Mom see us? Does she know we're okay?" Marcus looked up at the sky. A single cloud drifted past, shaped almost like a heart. "She sees us, Ethan. She's always watching, and she's so proud of us." "How do you know?" Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of everything he had carried finally beginning to lift. "Because I kept my promise. I didn't let the sadness change who I am. I kept being kind. And because of that, look at all the people we've helped. Look at all the love around us." Ethan nodded slowly, his small face serious. "I'll keep being kind too, Dad, because Mom is watching, and because that's what our family does." Marcus pulled his son close, feeling the steady beat of his healed heart. He thought about Rachel, about the last words she had spoken before the disease took her. He thought about Harold, who had watched from a distance and seen something worth believing in. He thought about all the people the foundation would help, all the lives that would change. $500 million had come into his life like a storm. But the money was never the point. The point was what you did with it. The point was who you became along the way. Marcus Bennett had not become a billionaire. He had become something far more valuable. A father, a healer, a keeper of promises. And somewhere in the golden light of an autumn afternoon, Rachel was smiling.